Welcome to this forum for the July 4th special election for the 8th U.S. Congressional District. This forum is sponsored jointly by the League of Women Voters of Southeast Missouri and KRCU. Welcome to our candidates, to our audience, to our listeners on KRCU, and to the viewers on the forum on cable television. Also, thank you to Rich Payne and Randy McWilson of the Cape Girardeau Career and Technology Center for the use of this room and for recording this program. Now, here's the League of Women Voters' Jan Miller with more.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you to everyone for coming tonight and for the people who are listening and watching. I'd like to start off by telling you about some important dates concerning the June election. The last day to register to vote or to make registration changes for the June special election is Wednesday, May 8th. Now, however, Wednesday, May 8th is Truman Day, which is a state holiday. The Missouri Secretary of State office and the Cape Girardeau County Clerk office will be closed. But if you postmark your registrations by May 8th, that should be accepted. Please check with your own county clerk office about this date and just get your registration in early. Absentee ballots are now available at the county clerk's office. Mailed in or faxed absentee ballot requests must be received by the election authority no later than 5 p.m. on the Wednesday prior to any election. So that's May 29. Voters can vote by absentee in the office of the local election authority until 5 p.m. the night before the election. That's Monday, June 3rd. Now I'd like to read our nonpartisan statement. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participations of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Our purpose is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government, and to act on selected governmental issues. As an organization, the League never supports a political party or candidate. However, the League recognizes the role of political parties in our form of government and believes that participation in the activities of political parties is an essential ingredient of citizen responsibility. Here's our program for tonight. Each candidate will make a 3-minute opening statement. The moderator, Jacob, will ask questions provided by the audience. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer the question. The order of questioning will be alternated with each question. Each candidate will give a 2-minute closing statement. And now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Jacob McClellan from KRCU.
Thank you very much, Jan. And I'm going to introduce our 6 candidates. We have 6 candidates tonight in this forum. They include independent candidate Thomas W. Brown, Doug Inyart from the Constitution Party, Dr. Robert George, an independent candidate, Democratic candidate Steve Hodges, Libertarian Bill Slants, and Republican candidate Jason Smith. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming here to meet with us tonight. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our introductions now, and we are going to go in alphabetical order. So we'll begin with Mr. Brown. Please keep an eye on our timers over there. They may look unassuming, but they have mad ninja skills, and they will wrestle those microphones away from you if you go past the stop sign. So we are going to go ahead and turn over the floor to Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and KRCU for inviting us to this. My name is Thomas Brown. I'm a conservative independent candidate running for Congress. I grew up on a farm in southeast Missouri and am a veteran of the United States Air Force. I am also hold a master's degree in administration. My goals for the 8th District of Missouri are to help produce good jobs with benefits, change the credit rating, reform medical care, work on the financial budget of the United States of America, and rewrite bills to be more specific. First, to bring back the jobs we are what I consider a service country instead of an industrial country. We have very little growth in industry, and our district has 20% of the population in poverty. Tariffs and import taxes should be examined, and the Free Trade Act needs to be reviewed and amended. It is our duty to protect our jobs and companies and make sure that we can bring our jobs back. One way is bringing railroads back. It's an inexpensive way to travel and to transport goods. In doing this, we need to require that the workers and the materials come from the local area whenever possible to provide jobs. Recycling is also a priority for jobs. It is an immediate way to bring jobs to our area, and it provides a green effect on our environment. Medical expenses should be addressed. Everyone should pay between 7 and 10% of their salary. Allow the insurance companies to bid for these services. My mom worked all her life, and she pays 16% on a small Social Security check. Costs and expenses of medical care is completely out of control. One way to help deter this is medical fraud should be addressed and licenses of the doctors pulled and from the hospital when they fraud the government. 1 out of every 4 people don't have health care. The average cost for a 4-person family is over $20,000. Our average family income for this district is only $37,000. Also, our government needs to be financially responsible. Hold a second, stuck there. We need to stop spending our money out of the country until we get our budget under control. I don't mind helping other countries, but $60 million given to the Egypt children to go to college, 37 given to Pakistan to send their kids to college, and I have a son, and you may have sons and daughters who are struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We'll now have the introduction from Doug Inyart.
Hi, I'm Doug Inyart. I'm the Constitution Party candidate for the 8th District. On Friday evenings, my son brings our twin grandkids to our house for family time. On Saturday morning, I get up before everyone else and make oatmeal for the twins. Saturdays are a very important family time for me. I love my grandkids. They're a big part of my life. They are the most important reason that I entered this race. Our central government, both major parties, has spent us to the edge of collapse. My grandchildren's estimated payback currently is over $220,000. They are now being labeled the debt-paying generation. Our federal debt is nearly $17 trillion, and the current crop of politicians and bureaucrats play games with us. They direct cuts at areas just to get attention and try to convince us that cutting the budget can't be done, that we have to continue the print, borrow, and spend behavior that has resulted in this sorry condition. The government is eroding our rights and our states' rights, and they do it with our own money. When a crisis occurs, the government's response is to place more limits on us, the citizens, taking the pathway of least resistance. In the words of Rahm Emanuel, you never want to waste a serious crisis. Okay, let's turn this back on the established political elite. Let's send another party to Washington. I have the solution. Actually, we've had it all the time. It's in the Constitution. We need to send new blood and reinstall our main operating system. We've been asleep at the wheel. All of us have. We forgot our history and our heritage. We forgot that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We, the people, must regain control of this government that is supposed to exist under the consent of the governed. When I joined the Marine Corps, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. I meant it then, I mean it now. We have enemies abroad, certainly, but the most dangerous we have are those inside the gates. I view it as my duty to do all in my power to regain control of our central government, to shrink it in size and in cost, and to limit its intrusion into our lives. I owe this duty to my grandchildren and yours, and to my nation. My thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for all who are listening.
Thank you, Mr. Inyer. Our next introduction will come from Dr. Robert George.
As she said, my name is Dr. Robert George. I'm a practicing physician here in Cape Girardeau now. I'm from Puxico. And I'd like to thank you all for being here. Thank the League of Women Voters for having us here to speak there. I'd like to give you a little background on myself. I've been in the medical field for approximately 60 years. I started off as a laboratory technologist and worked my way up to supervisor of all labs. I later went to chiropractic college and graduated there and practiced chiropractic for a few years. I subsequently had a chance to go to medical school, graduated from medical school, and I'm licensed in the states of Iowa, New Mexico, and Missouri here. I have served 2 tours of combat duty in Korea in 1951 and 1953, 10 months in Japan. I believe in the Constitution and I plan to keep it strong as one can do. The Constitution gives us many rights and privileges. That is why I'm so concerned when the Constitution is bent to suit the rules and to match the interest of private interest on there, private views and all. One can listen to the political speeches where the half-truths and the distortion of the facts are designed to persuade a particular philosophy or a viewpoint. During World War II, one of Hitler's staff said, if you tell a lie loud enough and often enough, the people will start to believe it. When our own officials begin to do things like this, it's time for the American people to stand up and take notice. It should make us all concerned. The operating word is listening. Elected officials should listen to the people who know about these specific bills and all, and should see what the public's interest is in this bill, not what the political party's interests are or the individual particular party line on there. You might remember Joanne Emerson. She actually lost her first primary election to a guy that lived out in Lowndes, Missouri, I believe it was. But the political party decided that she had better name recognition, and they did not support the person who won the election, and they gave her their support. We must restore the confidence in our congressmen and women and do away with the negativity. Thank you. Bob George. Write me in.
Thank you, Dr. George. We'd like to remind our candidates also to be sure you speak directly into one of the microphones that we have there on the table. Our next candidate is Steve Hodges from the Democratic Party.
Good to see you, Jacob. Ladies of the Women's League of Voters, thanks for having us here tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room as I come back to the city of my birthplace. My name is Steve Hodges, and I live in East Prairie, Missouri. I have for the last 50 years. I was a businessman there with my father, and our family had that store for 43 years until selling it in 2005. I've been married to Amy Hodges for 40-plus years. She's a retired career teacher. I have 3 sons and 2 wonderful redheaded grandsons. I've kind of come full circle. I was born here in Cape, came back, went to 8th grade here, 4 years of college, and then a year of graduate school at the University of Missouri, and now I find myself coming back appearing to represent this area. So it's very rewarding. I'm running for this U.S. representative job for a number of reasons. But I think most importantly, it's the result of some of the experiences I had in my supermarket business. I had a customer whose name was Henry. And Henry was uneducated. He was farm labor, drove a tractor, Henry's been married for over 50 years, 5 sons, 1 mentally challenged. All of them got through with certificates from high school. 2 of them got through college. And Henry could come in my store on a Friday and cash a check. And on occasion, Henry would say, "Steve, can I get some stuff on credit? I'm running a little short." I said, "You go ahead and get what you need." So then the next week, Henry would come back and he'd cash a check and he'd pay his bill. And on rare occasions, he would come in and say, "Steve, had to take Wanda to the doctor this week, or I had to buy a tire for the truck, and I'm just out of money, but I'm still hungry." So I said, "Henry, you get whatever you need." And when Dad and I sold the store in 2005, Henry didn't owe me a penny. A few others did, but I got it. But the point I'm making here is that that's what Southeast Missouri is all about. That's the fiber of the people. They're good, honest people. They're not looking for handouts, but every once in a while they're looking for a handout to help them. Good folks. I've learned a lot from the people that I served as my customers and the people that I've served as my constituents in the past 7 years in the Missouri House. My name is Steve Hodges, and I'm asking for your vote on June 2nd. 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Our next introduction comes from Bill Slants from the Libertarian Party.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm running for U.S. Congress because now more than ever, we need someone who will stand up and unapologetically say, "Stop the madness." The voice of reason has been silent in all levels of government for far too long. I've always believed strongly in public service, but I thought my talents were best spent by running my business and creating jobs. After watching everything I cherish being compromised by big government mismanagement, I can no longer remain on the sidelines. I've never served in public office, but now is my time. Through my eyes, I see very little difference between Democrats and Republicans. Ultimately, they believe in big government and that big government will solve all of our problems. I am not a Democrat and I am not a Republican. I'm a libertarian. I believe in limited government. Individuals should be free to make choices for themselves and accept responsibility for the choices they make. The libertarian way approaches politics based on the principle of self-ownership. No group, government, nor individual should be allowed to dictate or direct the life of any other group, government, or individual. From my viewpoint, I see 3 major dysfunctions in government today. The first, the large majority of Congress is made up of attorneys. And these attorneys are trained to win at all costs, no matter what the price, even if it's by sleight of hand or through deception. So you have the left attorneys and you have the right attorneys, and they're never going to give it up. The next are the lobbyists and the special interest. This is a you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back. This is, you got the Monsantos and the Pfizers of the world propping these politicians up, and in return, they want favor and regulation that'll put their business in a good light. And worst of all, it's for money and power. But I'm not going to sit here and complain to you about what I find dysfunctional in government without offering you some remedies. First, our founding fathers intended us to be governed by common folk, regular citizens, not the elite, not the lawyers. As far as the special interests, let's deregulate, defund, remove all of their fuel. That will take care of the money and the power grab in government. Think of government more like the way you think of your own family. We don't always agree with one another, but we find ways to accept. That's the key. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slants. And our last candidate to introduce himself will be the Republican candidate, Jason Smith.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and KRCU for hosting this event. Also, I want to thank the Cape Girardeau School District for the facility and allowing us to be here today. And thank each and every one of you for coming out. You could be anywhere on a Thursday night, and you've decided to come and listen to all of us. I'm looking forward to discussing the issues, and I'm glad to see the others up here with me. My name is Jason Smith. I am a seventh-generation native of this district. I come from South Central Missouri. My family's been here a long time. I love this district, and I care greatly about the people of this district. I'm a small business owner. I know what it's like to actually balance a budget, live within your means, and actually sign the front of a paycheck, just not the back of it. That's the kind of leadership that we need more at all levels of government. I'm the fourth generation owner of our family farm. I have a few beef cows and some hogs. I also currently serve as the Speaker Pro Tem in the Missouri House of Representatives. You know, folks ask, why are you running for Congress? I say I'm running for Congress because I'm tired of watching Washington kick the can down the road and not genuinely solve the problems at hand. Folks, when you look at the issues, you should be upset. What I tell individuals is that we need to make Washington look more like Missouri. You know, in Washington, D.C., they just continue to spend and spend. You know, in fact, they haven't even passed a budget in more than 1,400 days, let alone balance a budget. In fact, Washington has failed to balance a budget 51 out of the last 56 years. But you know what they've done? They've continued to increase our debt ceiling limit. In fact, they've increased it more than 70 times since 1962. That's a problem, folks. When you look at our national debt of over $16.4 trillion, that's over $53,000 that each and every one of you owe. You know what we do in Missouri? We balance the budget. We live within our means. We can't print money. We can't borrow from China. Folks, we need to get serious. We need to change the direction of our country. If you're wanting fresh, conservative leadership, I'm asking for your vote. I'm 100% pro-life, a strong advocate for the Second Amendment, and the only candidate in this race endorsed by the Missouri Right to Life. I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And now we're going to start with our questions. Candidates, please remember that you will have exactly 1 minute to answer these questions and to speak into your microphone. All right, our first question and the first candidate to answer will be Doug Enyart. And the question is, we need to cut spending and balance the federal budget. How will you work with the majority party to do that?
I have an idea for some proposed legislation, and in broad strokes, the idea is this, that I would introduce a bill that would be limiting the government, that Congress would be required every 10 years to examine every federal agency to see, is it constitutional? Much of our current central government exists outside the parameters of the Constitution. We can't turn the ship right away. We can't turn it on a dime, but we can begin turning it the right way and in the right direction. And another thing we would be looking at with that legislation is it better done at the state level? Can these federal agencies be merged and downsized? Do we really need them? And I think I'm out of time.
Dr. George, we need to cut spending and balance the federal budget. How will you work with the majority party to do that?
I believe, first of all, one should start out with trying to eliminate all of the fraud, kickbacks, and all of that that's going on in the federal government. Not allow all your representatives to start taking money from your people who are lobbyists up there in Washington. I know personally where in the medical profession that there are 4 doctors in Florida who have bilked the federal government out of over $4 billion for 4 doctors. That's going a long way towards bilking the government out of that. But the fraud that is in the Medicare and Medicaid and all that, that needs to be stopped. And I think that working closely together and listening to why people are voting the way they are voting should be done with the other individuals there. Thank you.
Mr. Hodges.
Thank you. Well, certainly, I think I would approach this as we have in Jefferson City. In my 7 years there, I've worked closely with Governor Nixon and with the Republican Party to balance the budget. We're deemed to do that in the state of Missouri by the Constitution. I think it's something that we need to bring to realization. We need to get a spirit of camaraderie in Washington, D.C. My effort would be concentrating on, again, working together with the people to cut out wasteful spending, to consolidate services, just like we have at the state level. Thank you.
Mr. Slants.
To balance the budget and cut spending. First, I would work to abolish many of the agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security. They have served their purpose. There's no longer need for them. Also, the TSA. Let the airlines take care of their own security, as well as the EPA, the DEA, and the IRS. At the same time, immediately cut the budget of every agency by 10% each year over the next 4 years. The military should be strong and state-of-the-art. It should be adequate to defend us against all enemies. But we must immediately end our foreign commitments and need to stop the occupation of other countries and close every foreign military base. That's how I'd stop the spending.
Mr. Smith.
You know, if you look back, the revenues that we have right now is $2.9 trillion. We spend $3.8 trillion. In 2009, we spent $2.9 million. Just 4 years ago, we've decided to spend almost $1 trillion more. We just need to stop increasing the spending. We need to go through the budget line by line. Oh, wait, we don't have a budget. Let's first try passing a budget so then we can stop the spending. That is the key. Stop the spending. There's a lot of waste in the government, and I would strongly, strongly advocate for a balanced budget amendment. That's a key. We do it in Missouri. We balance the budget every year for the past 8 years that I've been in the Missouri House and the majority party. We need to do that in Washington.
Mr. Brown.
Number one is we need to bring our jobs back, because if people are working and paying taxes, it's going to help take care of that problem. And another thing is we've got to make sure the bills that are wrote in Washington, D.C. are specific. $1,000 and some $1,000 and some page bill, that's just ridiculous. It's a waste of paper, and nobody knows what it said. Another thing is if we make our bills specific and no loopholes, that extra earmark money isn't going to go out to somebody that doesn't need it. Also, we need to cut out the waste. We need to cut the salaries. The job this is gets $175,000 for a 182-day contract. It has a $1 to $1.5 million budget for salaries under them. With our technology, we don't need that much money going out. Right there's $500 million we could save by cutting that salary in half. Thank you.
Our next question will start with Dr. Robert George. The question is, what is your position on the federal government's role on the Second Amendment?
As I say, I believe in the Constitution, Bill of Rights and all. I do believe in the Second Amendment, but I do believe that people should have the right to bear arms, carry concealed weapons, which I do have a concealed weapon. I don't have it with me, but
Thank you.
I am all for it. As a hunter, I believe that I need to have rifles to shoot there, but I don't see any need at all for an automatic weapon with extra loaded clips and all of that stuff. They're just, if we ever had a takeover of our government, the people like myself, we would manage to get those weapons from the people who are taking us over, and that's the way that we have always all wars have been won. The Indians got the rifles from the soldiers and all, so if something happened to us, we would get our weapons that we needed to defeat whoever's trying to take over our government. Thank you.
Mr. Hodges.
Thank you. I'm absolutely a supporter of Second Amendment rights. When I look in southeast Missouri, which I've lived here all my life, we have hunters, hobbyists, target shooters, collectors, you know, all these people. I think the president is wrong in what he's doing. He's trying to limit the whole because of the actions of a few. And I'm very disappointed about that, and I've come out publicly against that. So that's what I would like you to think about. There's various fractures amongst that issue, but I'm definitely going to be a proponent for defending Second Amendment rights. Thank you.
Mr. Slants.
The Second Amendment should remain untouched. The private ownership and use of firearms or other weapons in a non-invasive way is fully legitimate. Government regulation, licensing, and registration of guns should be abolished. Our founding fathers understood that the right to keep and bear arms was essential for maintaining liberty. Guns are essential for private citizens to protect themselves, their family, and their property from dangerous citizens. More importantly, an oppressive government. Guns are private property. It should not be placed into a specific regulated class. A gun might be used to harm another person. That person that uses a gun against someone else should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, but they should not be subject to prior restraint.
Mr. Smith.
As I stated earlier, I'm a lifetime member of the National Rifle Association, strong believer in our Second Amendment rights. And whenever you pass gun control measures, it's only limiting our freedoms of law-abiding citizens. There's enough laws on the books. Those laws need to be enforced. We don't need additional laws. Folks, when you pass laws on the books on guns and our Second Amendment right, it's much like saying we're going to ban soda to stop obesity. We got to stop the nonsense.
Mr. Brown.
Well, I'm going to defend the Second Amendment. I'm an avid hunter and a proud gun owner, and in my opinion, the reason that people are killing people is because in most cases they've given up in faith and hope in the future. You know, in the cities, you know, these people that went crazy and killed all these kids, well, you know, that's just a crazy person. But, you know, people are killing people every day in the cities. And I think a lot of it is they have no faith and hope in the future and no jobs. If you have faith and hope in the future, I don't think they're going to commit this many crimes. But I will defend the Second Amendment on that because criminals are always going to get around the laws. Thank you.
Mr. Enyart.
The Second Amendment has no greater friend than the Constitution Party. The Constitution Party stands for the Constitution as it was originally intended and written and documented by the Founding Fathers. We have to remember also from history that the purpose of the Second Amendment isn't about hunting. It's not even about self-defense. This is about the people having the power to resist tyranny. And that's a word we need to keep in mind, because with a Department of Homeland Security amassing an enormous amount of ammunition inside this country, we need to stop and think twice. Maybe we actually need to keep our guns, and we need to keep our ammunition, and we need to keep those clips. This current activity is just based on cosmetics, how a gun looks. There are many guns that are more powerful but legal.
Our next question is, if elected, how can you help spur job growth in the district? And we'll start with Mr. Hodges.
You know, as a businessman, a lifetime businessman in southeast Missouri, I created some jobs. I treated the people fairly. I gave them fringe benefits. Most of them stayed with me for long periods of time if I approved of their job performance, that I gave them proper supervision. I think that there are a lot of jobs out there in our district for properly trained people. And I speak time and time again about vocational tech centers like we're looking here. If you read the sign out in the hall of the different subjects that are going on in this building, there are jobs out there to be had for properly trained people who will show up for work and pass the drug test. Thank you.
Mr. Slants.
Do you know that 20% of everyone working in this country right now is a government employee? That's 1 in 5. And of those 5 people, of those 5 individuals, the government employee is the second highly compensated. I think that's absurd. First, we don't need to restrict foreign trade. We're a consumer nation. Why punish ourselves? We need less regulation. Small businesses should not have to comply with the same regulations as big corporations. Jobs can be pretty easily outsourced. Our government fails to recognize and admit the fact that capital and jobs will move around the globe at lightning speed and will not stay where they are penalized by excessive taxation or regulation. We need to lower taxes with a simpler tax code, and we need a less we need a less comfortable safety net. We need a less comfortable social safety net. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Government doesn't create jobs. They can create an environment to allow jobs to prosper. What we need is less taxes, less regulation, and less litigation. In Missouri, I passed a bill last year that reduced burdensome rules and regulations on the books. At the federal level, there's over 170,000 pages of burdensome rules. We just recently, a few weeks ago, had a company in Butler County, in Poplar Bluff, Nordine, that one of the reasons they cited for closing is burdensome regulations, and they're moving to Mexico. If we don't get serious about it and eliminate these burdensome regulations that EPA and other regulatory agencies across our country that's putting on farmers and small businesses, we're going to lose more jobs. We have to reduce regulations, taxes, and litigation.
Mr. Brown.
Well, I think bringing back the railroads is a great idea because it's the cheapest way to transport goods, and it also, would create a lot of jobs. Second is recycling. We need to recycle better. We do not recycle well. When I was in Germany, I went to a recycling plant, and it's amazing how many people work there, and they recycle everything. They just don't recycle a little bit. They recycle everything. We have farming and mining in our community that we need to take better care of. Logging, they need less regulations. I talked to a logger, and when he told me the regulations the state puts on him, I thought that was terrible. Also, tourism. That's a big thing here. We need to really expand the tourism in our area. And that's about all I have to say.
Mr. Inyard.
The way we bring jobs to the district is the same way we bring jobs to the entire nation. We need to get regulations under control. The administration rolled out 5,500 new regulations after the last election. As a small business owner and an employer, I can tell you from firsthand experience, from Main Street experience, how burdensome regulations are. And from the other my clients and the other businesses that I have to deal with, everybody says the same thing. More regulations, more time. My CPA told me a couple years ago, well, you better fill this form out and you better do this, because if you don't and you decide you want to hire more employees, you're going to be in trouble because it's going to take a whole lot more paperwork. So the bottom line is, let's reduce regulations, and keep in mind one thing: regulations favor big business.
Dr. George.
Well, as I said earlier, I tell the people what they want to hear. Say it again and again and again, loud and clear, so that they cut taxes and all that. Cutting taxes is one good way of that, but it can't happen. We still need our roads. We still need our police. We need our firefighters and all that stuff. They expect to make a good living. we could hire more of these people in these types of areas to that. We could actually train more doctors, nurses, and all that stuff in there and give them an opportunity to work at different places. We did have government jobs. Yes, we had the WPA long ago. It saved our country and all. There are measures like that that we can still do to create more jobs, which would be government-funded jobs, because we have more taxes than what we have to have right now. So that's all.
All right, our next question will start with Mr. Slants. The 8th District is one of the poorest in the country. How would you seek to alleviate poverty in the district?
Oh, I think we've answered a lot of those questions right here, you know, with creating jobs. You have raised a whole generation of individuals who have come to expect the social handout. There are people who are in their 20s and 30s who know no other way to live except that they're just going to be, you know, living on the government dime. And that has been trained since the WPA. That's been trained since the beginning of Social Security. So the first thing you want to do is we need to start downsizing these programs. We need to downsize these the welfare state and encourage these people to stand up for themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Agriculture is the basis of the 8th Congressional District. We are the most diversified agriculture district outside of the state of California. We grow everything but citrus and sugar. This is a natural resource that gives us a competitive advantage over anywhere else in the country, let alone the world. The 7 counties in southeast Missouri make up more than 35% of the agriculture output for the entire state. Like I said earlier, the way that you create jobs and eliminate poverty is to eliminate regulations, reduce taxes, and reduce litigation. If we allow our farmers to be able to farm and allow our small businesses to grow, the best way to do that is to get government off their backs, and that will turn this district around.
Mr. Brown.
As I stated earlier, we got to bring the jobs back. I went to 30 of the 32 counties in our district, and there is no new industries that employ a lot of employees. There's several small businesses which are doing fine, but small business usually don't have any kind of benefits. And this is our problem in our whole area is benefits. People can't afford health care. So you know what? Instead of working, they take a handout, which is wrong. But you know what? Until we bring jobs back to this district, it's not going to change. And we're just in a dreamland if we believe that. We have to get the jobs back. So bring in the industries and give tax breaks, and we'll bring everybody to work. Thank you.
Mr. Enyart.
Well, again, how do we bring jobs, and how do we get the economy of this district going is much like the nation. I will say that part of the problem with our district is that it's so remote and so rural, and there's really not anything we can do about that. In fact, we actually kind of like it. We like our hills and our curvy roads. But I'll tell you something. Another reason that I got into this race is that every day my wife gets up and I get up and we drive past our neighbors who don't work. Now, let me change that. They won't work. Somehow, we're going to have to decide how we're going to get a work ethic reinstalled in our population. I don't have all the answers on that one. All I can do is work on the business side, reduce regulations. I know that from first-hand experience. Reduce taxes. That creates more jobs. Thank you.
Dr. George.
What is the question again now?
The 8th District is one of the poorest in the country.
Oh.
How would you seek to alleviate poverty in the district?
Actually, once again, a lot of our people who are on the poor Medicaid area, the welfare and all of that stuff, I think there are people that can be put to work in those positions, and these people will draw a salary from it as well as a little bit of their handouts that they're taking in there. But you give them something to do and give them a bonus for doing it, and actually give a penalty for those who do not want to get out and do a job every day. I mean, it's nice to get up and to have something to do every day, and you can hold your head high when you think, oh, I've got a job to go to today, and they'll feel much better about themselves and the whole situation. So.
Our next question will start. I'm sorry, did I jump ahead? Sorry, go right ahead, Mr. Hodges.
I'm watching you. Okay.
Mr. Hodges.
Thanks, Jacob. One word, education. Education can solve almost any problem that we have. Education and training. Now, it's true that agriculture is the economic engine of southeast Missouri, and I know that. But small business is the backbone of our economy. And I think if we protect small businesses, give them incentives, then that will create new jobs. We'd like to see small businesses come back to our rural communities, like my hometown of East Prairie. And I'm talking about businesses might employ 5 to 10 people. So again, my answer to your question, education.
All right, our next question, the first person to respond will be Jason Smith. Why do so many veterans have great difficulty getting assistance from the VA? Do you have any ideas to improve the VA and make it easier for veterans to get the help they deserve?
You know, our veterans have served our country, and we have an obligation to protect their service and protect all their benefits. One of the most disturbing things that just happened in the sequestration is that President Obama decided to make cuts on who? The largest cuts were on our veterans. That's absolutely unacceptable. The veteran should never be used as a political tool, especially from our president. That's unacceptable, and we need to make sure that we always protect and fulfill the obligations that we owe to our veterans and make sure that they are provided with the utmost care.
Mr. Brown.
Being a veteran, and I went to the Veterans Hospital, a lot of it is due that there's not enough people at the Veterans Hospitals to take care of all their patients. Also, a thing that I've seen there is a lot of people go and, you know, they want benefits, which, you know, we take for granted. You know, I'll give you an example. I broke my foot when I was in the military, and I have a bone growing out of my foot. Well, you know, I did not want to, you know, file for no disability or anything because, you know, that was a broken foot. But I have a bone growing out, and I just wanted them to take care of it. I went, and you know what? I was denied treatment, and I was in the military for about 5 years, and I didn't understand why I was denied treatment as a veteran. And they said because other people take priority. Well, I went in, and I did just as the other veterans. I'd served my country. I'd have fought for my country if we'd had a war at the time, and I don't see why I should have been denied the benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Enyart.
That question is really close to home for me. I've got a reconstructed left eardrum because the VA dropped the ball. For 2 months, I tried to get service, and I could not get it. The only way I got service is when I walked into the St. Louis facility and said, I'm not leaving until I see a doctor. I've met a lot of veterans in the veterans hospitals. I've heard the same story over and over. If you want to call up Poplar Bluff and you have a problem with your foot, they're going to tell you it'll be at least 30 days before you can see the doctor. This has got to end. Our veterans, we owe our veterans better than that. And I have a specific idea on how to fix that. Mainstream the veterans into the civilian medical services. That's all we got to do. We comprise a very small percentage of the population. And this is authorized under the Constitution as supporting the Army and the Navy. So let's mainstream the veterans into the civilian medical services.
Dr. George.
Well, I would say I think I'm the only combat veteran here that served 2 tours in Korea in 1951 and 1953. So I have actually been denied hearing aids, which I have a slight hearing aids defect from sitting in between 4 Quad 50 machine guns in Korea, and I don't qualify for VA benefits. And so I think that being in Congress and being on the Veterans Committee would be a big help to all of our veterans. That somebody who's actually experienced some denial and it's been over 2 years since I have applied for benefits.
Mr. Hodges.
Well, my father, a member of the Greatest Generation, quit high school in Sikeston at the end of his junior year and served 2 years in the Philippines in the jungle. And he came back and finished his education. I'm very proud of the fact that my second son, Andrew, graduated from West Point, served in Iraq, Bosnia and Kosovo, and was stationed in Germany for 2 years. Neither one of those men thus far has used any military veteran benefits because they've been self-sustaining. I think, but they're very fortunate. We owe our veterans. Our veterans fought to protect our freedom, and we owe them. You know, I worked on a bill here in the Missouri House where we used to give incentives to factories, and we have a recycling plant right up here at Jackson, if you've ever been to it. It's an incentive to hire veterans who have served and give them jobs. Anything that I could do to assist them, I would be in favor of. Thank you.
And Mr. Slants.
We absolutely owe our veterans every piece of care we can give them. But the VA is the perfect, quintessential example as to why the government should not be involved. The VA is a bureaucratic nightmare, and this is why veterans are not getting good health care and good benefits. So veterans should be cared for by you, by the people. We should do it privately, and we should do it collectively, and recognize that the veterans have served this country, and they're getting completely through the bureaucracy of this government. They're not getting the care they deserve. We can take care of them better than that.
Thank you, gentlemen, for answering all of our questions. It's now time for the closing comments. We are running a little bit over, and we have to stay within our broadcast window, so our closing statements will have to be 1 minute only, 1 minute. And the first person with his closing statement will be Thomas Brown.
Well, as I said, I think we need to bring the jobs back. And if we don't bring the jobs back, we're not going to prosper. When we bring the jobs back, everybody pays, everybody works, and our system works. Right now, 1 out of every 5 people are in poverty, and most of them aren't working. 1 out of every 3 people get some kind of medical money from the United States government. When 1 out of 3 get that, 2 out of the thirds are paying for it, and they do overcharges. Thank you.
Vineyard.
Okay, cutting everything in half here. I'm asking you to hire me because I have a broad array of experience.
I've served in the military. I've worked in the field of natural resources for decades. I've worked for state and federal agencies, both as an employee and as a contractor. I built my own business from scratch, starting with nothing more than a business plan on a phone. I've been an employer. I've worked on various professional committees and boards, different organizations. I've authored or co-authored several sets of bylaws. I've written technical documents. And I've lived a life on the receiving end of government regulation. We cannot continue doing what we've done all of our lives, electing the lesser of 2 evils, expecting a different result. We've done that for over 150 years, and it's resulted in a nation teetering on collapse. We need more choices. They need more competition. We need to restore constitutionally limited government and restore pride in America.
Dr. George.
I sat here and I listened to all of these answers. These answers are not all as simple as one would make believe that they are. They are very hard situations to correct. I can sit here and I know a politician when I hear one speaking here. I'm really not much of a politician, but there are many things that I would work very hard if you hire me to go to Washington to represent you, and I will listen to what the people of my district have to ask for and all. So I once again will say, write in my name, Robert George, for the 8th District. Thank you.
Mr. Hodges.
I want you to know that I consider myself an independent thinker. There's probably nobody in the House, and you can check the voting records, who has crossed the aisle to vote with the opposition party more than I have in the last 7 years. And I've done that because if the issue was right, if the legislation was correct, if it fit my people, I voted for it. I'll do the same thing in Washington, D.C. I've been a businessman, been involved in education as a member of the school board. I have agricultural knowledge. I worked on the farm back in my early high school days. If you've never loaded watermelons, you've really missed something, I'll tell you that. But nonetheless, I'm 64 years old. I've had a variety of life's experiences, and I think that makes me the best candidate to replace Representative Emerson in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for all of you coming tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Slants.
Do you expect things to be better next year? If you don't, then why would you consider voting the same way you have in the past? Why would you consider maintaining the status quo and expect things to change? Isn't now the time to consider an alternative? Stop asking yourself, when will they fix it? You or they. You need to fix it. Part of my platform would be to repeal the income tax provision and corporate tax. Let's end government involvement in health care across the board. Here is my advantage to you. I do not need to be politically correct. I am beholden to no one except you. I have the freedom of never having to answer to special interests. Every policy decision I make will be based on principle, not party ideals. My party does not expect me to toe the party line. The libertarian tent is pretty big, and there's enough room in here for all of you.
Mr. Smith.
This is a great district. You know, I'm a son of an auto mechanic, and my mother worked on the assembly line at Briggs & Stratton. I know what it's like to work hard and to accomplish something. That's the heart of everyone in the 8th Congressional District. We're hard-working, God-fearing individuals who believe in protecting our rights and our freedoms. In the Missouri House, I have fought to reduce burdensome regulations on small businesses and family farmers. I have fought to reduce taxes. I have fought to protect life. I have fought to protect our Second Amendment. I have fought against the party elite of both parties. That's what we need in Washington. We need someone that's not afraid and willing to stand up to the task. And we can do it. And if you're looking for someone that will go to Washington who's not going to be a wallflower and will fight for our values here in Southeast Missouri, I am your candidate, the fresh conservative voice.
Candidates, thank you very much for attending our forum tonight. It's been a pleasure getting to ask some questions and hear back from you. Thank you very much for coming. We'd also like to thank Rich Payne and Randy McWilson from the Career and Technology Center, and to Randy McWilson's crew, and to the League of Women Voters. This forum will be shown on public access cable channels and on the school district cable channel several times before the election. Audio will be available at krcu.org. Make your voice heard, and remember to vote on June the 4th. Thank you very much for coming out tonight to hear from these candidates with us, folks.